I was always the invisible engine of my family, the one who made things run smoothly while everyone else took credit for the ride. If something needed fixing, organizing, booking, or rescuing at the last second, my name somehow appeared on the list without ever being officially asked. The funny part was they never saw it as work. To them, it was just what family does, which was their polite way of saying what you do for free. I handled my sister's wedding preparations the same way I handled everything else, quietly, efficiently, and without applause. Vendors were confirmed, transport routes were mapped, hotel rooms were negotiated down, and even the DJ had been carefully selected after 3 rounds of painful family disagreements. I didn't complain. I just made sure nothing collapsed. But appreciation was never part of the system. My parents treated my efforts like background noise, useful but unworthy of acknowledgement. My father would nod vaguely at my updates while scrolling his phone, and my mother would remind me not to overcomplicate simple things, right after I solved problems no one else could even understand. My sister, caught between excitement and family pressure, often relied on me but never openly defended me when criticism came my way. And her fiancé, he didn't like me much. Probably because I kept pointing out all the holes in his so-called perfect planning. Then came the moment that changed everything. It wasn't even a major argument, just another small spark in a long chain of disrespect. My parents decided I was too negative about the wedding and that I was creating unnecessary stress. So they made a decision that sounded absurd even as they said it out loud. I was no longer invited to my own sister's wedding. The irony was almost poetic. The person holding the entire event together had just been told to stay away from it. At first, I thought they would reconsider within a day. They didn't. Instead, they doubled down, convinced they could manage everything without me. I nodded, said nothing, and quietly stepped back. No more calls answered at midnight. No more vendor negotiations. No more emergency fixes disguised as favors. I simply stopped. What they didn't know was that the wedding wasn't just an event I was helping with. It was an ecosystem I was silently maintaining. And now, that ecosystem was about to find out what happens when the person holding it together decides he no longer owes anyone free stability. Even stranger, I wasn't alone anymore. There was someone else in my life now, someone my family barely understood if they knew at all. She wasn't from around here, not even from this planet. My girlfriend had arrived in my life like a glitch in reality, calm, logical, and endlessly amused by human chaos. Watching my family operate was, to her, like observing a species that survived purely on denial and last-minute panic. When I told her I had been uninvited from my sister's wedding, she tilted her head and asked, "So they removed the system administrator before launching the program?" Then she laughed like it was the funniest thing she had ever heard in any galaxy. I didn't respond. I just smiled a little and closed my laptop. Because for the first time, I wasn't going to fix anything. And the wedding week was getting very close. Wedding week arrived like a slow-moving disaster that nobody wanted to acknowledge. From the outside, everything still looked normal. Lights were being installed, invitations had already gone out, and my parents were confidently telling relatives that everything is under control. The same phrase they always used right before something collapsed. The difference this time was simple. I wasn't there in the background quietly catching the falling pieces. The first crack appeared when the DJ called to confirm final setup details. There were no final details. No confirmation emails. No payment clearance. Apparently, this small thing I used to handle had not been handled at all. The DJ politely informed them he had taken another booking. My mother laughed at first, thinking it was a misunderstanding, until the music vanishing from the wedding suddenly became a very real silence. Then the bakery refused to release the cake order. Something about missing authorization codes and unpaid balance holds. My sister tried to intervene, but the bakery had already moved on. The cake she had spent weeks designing had effectively been erased by administrative negligence. Meanwhile, transportation turned into a comedy of errors. The shuttle service sent buses to the wrong pickup points because the schedules I had originally created were never updated. Some guests ended up circling the city, others boarded random vans thinking they were part of the wedding convoy, and at least 2 elderly relatives arrived at a completely different ceremony happening across town, congratulating strangers while being confusedly thanked in return. The hotel arrangements weren't any better. Reservations that I had previously negotiated were never finalized, so guests began arriving to find their rooms either cancelled or reassigned. A few families were placed in completely different hotels miles away, causing a growing wave of angry phone calls that my parents were suddenly forced to manage themselves. The family group chat exploded. Messages came in faster than anyone could read them: complaints, panic, accusations, and increasingly desperate pleas for someone to fix this. My name started appearing repeatedly. First with frustration, then confusion, and finally panic. My parents, who had been so confident about removing me from the equation, now looked like people trying to solve a machine after removing its operating system. And through all of this, I stayed silent. My phone rang constantly. I didn't answer. My sister sent a message that simply said, "Please. I don't know what's happening." I almost replied. Almost. Instead, I leaned back while my alien girlfriend sat beside me, watching the chaos unfold on a holographic feed she insisted on projecting just for educational entertainment. She was fascinated by how humans could simultaneously depend on someone and still treat them like they were optional. "So let me understand," she said calmly, chewing something she claimed was a snack but looked suspiciously like compressed starlight. "They removed the primary coordinator before the most complex social gathering of their year?" "Yes," I said. "And now everything is collapsing in predictable linear failure patterns?" "Yes." She nodded thoughtfully. "Your species is extremely confident for one that relies heavily on undocumented emotional infrastructure." That one made me smirk. By the second day, desperation had fully replaced arrogance. Relatives who once dismissed me began sending polite messages. Then less polite ones. Then outright begging. The same people who used to joke about me, thinking I run the family, were now asking if I could just quickly fix a small issue. But I didn't move. Not because I was angry. Because for the first time, I understood something very clearly: none of this was ever small. By the third day, the chaos had matured into something almost artistic. It wasn't just a wedding going wrong anymore, it was a full-scale collapse of assumptions. My parents were no longer pretending things were fine. Their confidence had evaporated, replaced by that particular kind of panic that only appears when people realize the invisible systems they relied on were real all along. My phone finally stopped ringing non-stop calls and instead started receiving desperate, carefully worded messages. The tone had shifted completely. No more accusations. No more, "You're overreacting." Now it was, "We just need your help for a moment." And, "You understand family responsibility." It was almost impressive how quickly the narrative changed when reality stopped cooperating. I still didn't reply. That's when my father showed up at my door. He didn't look angry this time. That version of him had disappeared somewhere between the cancelled DJ and the missing cake. Instead, he looked tired, like a man who had been forced to read a manual he always assumed was unnecessary. "You've made your point," he said. I didn't respond immediately. My alien girlfriend, sitting on the couch, observed him like he was an interesting but inefficient machine. My father continued, "We didn't realize how much you were doing. Just fix this. The wedding is falling apart." That was the moment I finally stood up. Not in anger. Not in revenge. Just clarity. "I didn't make anything fall apart," I said calmly. "I just stopped holding it together." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I had prepared years ago without ever intending to use it. Inside was a detailed breakdown of everything I had done for the family over time. Not emotionally framed, not exaggerated, just numbers, hours, payments, coordination records, emergency fixes, and the invisible labor that had quietly supported dozens of family events. I handed it to him. He started reading. At first, he looked confused. then uncomfortable, then increasingly silent. My mother arrived midway through, scanning the pages over his shoulder. The silence between them grew heavier with every line. It wasn't just the wedding logistics. It was years of assumptions collapsing onto paper. My sister arrived shortly after, reading over their shoulders. Her expression changed differently. Less shock, more realization. Like she was seeing the shape of something she had always vaguely felt but never fully understood. Then my alien girlfriend leaned forward and added her own data pad into the conversation. I recalculated based on interspecies labor valuation standards, she said politely. He has been undercompensated by approximately an unreasonable margin. She tilted her head. On my planet, this would qualify as exploitative dependence behavior. My father blinked at her. Excuse me? She smiled. It means you were lucky he didn't leave sooner. That landed harder than anything I could have said. For the first time, the conversation shifted. Not to excuses, but to recognition. My sister broke first. I didn't know, she said quietly. I thought you were just good at handling things. I looked at her. I was. That's why no one noticed it was work. My mother tried to respond, but the words didn't come out cleanly. My father finally closed the folder. What do you want? He asked, quieter now. I paused. Not for drama. Just honesty. I don't want revenge, I said. I want boundaries. Then I looked at the wedding schedule still failing in real time. I'll help fix it, I added. But not because I'm obligated. Because I choose to. My alien girlfriend stood up immediately. Excellent. Cooperative restructuring phase initiated. She turned to me. I will assist. Mostly to observe human crisis management efficiency under pressure. And for the first time since all of this started, I walked back into the problem, not as the unpaid system holding everything together, but as someone finally deciding where he stood inside it. The wedding day arrived like a storm held together by duct tape and last-minute miracles. Everything was still technically broken, but now it was broken with direction. I wasn't fixing things silently anymore. I was coordinating openly, delegating, and for the first time, people were actually listening instead of assuming things would just work out. The first emergency was the DJ situation. The replacement I arranged arrived late, confused, and slightly terrified, but he had equipment and a contract I personally supervised. Music returned to the event like oxygen being restored to a room. My sister actually laughed for the first time in days when the speakers finally came alive. Next came transportation. I rerouted half the guests myself, canceling the chaotic loop of wrong hotels and mistaken venues. My alien girlfriend handled half of it faster than I could explain it. She hacked the logistics system with calm efficiency and a commentary about how primitive scheduling systems rely too much on optimism. Some guests still arrived at the wrong place, but at least now it was the correct wrong place. Then the cake problem. It had not been lost, as originally believed. It had been sitting in storage under a misfiled code. I recovered it personally, while my mother stared like she was watching a resurrection. My sister nearly cried when it finally arrived intact, slightly delayed but still perfect. By mid-ceremony, things were no longer collapsing. They were stabilizing. Not perfect, but functional. And that alone felt like a victory. During the reception, something shifted in the atmosphere. Guests who had spent the last few days frustrated started realizing how narrowly everything had escaped disaster. A few of them approached me quietly, thanking me, not just for the wedding, but for everything they had never noticed before. My parents stood awkwardly at the edge of it all. No longer angry. No longer dismissive. Just aware. My father eventually walked up to me. He didn't try to lecture or justify anything. He just said, "We should have listened." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a full apology. But it was real enough. My sister hugged me without saying anything at first. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." That mattered more than anything else. Later, she gave a short speech in front of everyone. Not overly emotional, not exaggerated. Just honest. She said the wedding almost didn't happen, and the only reason it did was because someone they took for granted refused to be invisible anymore. She didn't name everything I had done, but she didn't need to. The room understood. My alien girlfriend, standing beside me, leaned over and said, "Humans express gratitude very loudly once consequences are visible." I almost laughed. After the ceremony settled into celebration, things finally softened. My parents tried to approach me again, more carefully this time. No demands. No assumptions. Just conversation. We didn't fix everything in one moment, but we started something better. Boundaries with acknowledgement instead of expectation. I told them I wouldn't be the default solution anymore. That helping was a choice, not a role I was assigned by birth. They didn't argue. My sister agreed immediately. And that was enough. As the night continued, my alien girlfriend took my hand and whispered, "Your species is emotionally inefficient, but occasionally evolves under pressure." I asked her if that was a compliment. She smiled. "It is the closest thing I have." For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the invisible structure holding everything together. I felt like someone who could choose what to hold, and what to let others learn to carry. And strangely enough, that felt like the beginning of something even better than revenge.